Hi, I'm Chad with Move Forward Guitar. This lesson is from our course Beginner Course 2. Beginner Course 2 picks up right where Beginner Course 1 left off, and you're going to learn more chords, chord progressions, strumming patterns, how to play in time to a basic beat, and much more. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you a new strumming pattern. First off, this course includes jam tracks as well as a corresponding premium e-guide. The e-guide includes all the detailed charts and diagrams for each lesson, step-by-step instructions to help you practice and retain the material in the video lessons, extra bonus tips and tricks, and much more. To accelerate your learning, be sure to grab the jam tracks and your copy of the premium e-guide by clicking the link on the screen or looking in the description below. So now I'm going to teach you a new strumming pattern, and we'll call this Basic Strumming Pattern 3. And this is one of the most popular strumming patterns you'll run across. You'll use it all the time. It can be used in tons of songs. And the nice thing about learning this is that it's almost the same as Basic Strumming Pattern 2. You're just adding in one up strum at the end. And even though it's really similar to Basic Strumming Pattern 2, it's going to take some time to get down because of that last up strum. It makes you really have to rush what's going on with your chord changes. And I'll explain that as we're going through. First, I'll just play it for you so you can see it, and you'll see how it's just adding that last up strum to Basic Strumming Pattern 2. So here's Basic Strumming Pattern 3. So that was 4 times through the pattern. Here's 1 time. And that's down, down, up, up, down, up. And you can see how that's just added in that last up strum. If you look in your e-guide, Basic Strumming Pattern 2 was down, down, up, up, down. Now Basic Strumming Pattern 3 is down, down, up, down, up. And that might seem pretty simple, but it is pretty challenging at first because you have less time to change your chords now. Because of that last up strum, you don't have as much space to actually make your chord changes. So for example, if I was just going from a G to a C add 9, it'd be... You can see how when I made that change, it was right away because I did that last up strum and then I had to come back down right after that last up strum, right on my chord change. And something that's really common to do, and especially when you're playing fast, you don't have to necessarily do this when you're playing really slow. You can make those changes. But if you're playing fast, what you can do is on that last up strum, start your changes. So if I was going from G to C add 9, down, down, up, down, I would hold the G chord, but right on that last up strum, I would release my fingers and make that change to get me in place right for that next down strum. So right as I'm doing that last up strum is when I'm actually transitioning my chord. I'm not waiting for that last up strum to finish and then transitioning, because then I'm really having to rush that transition. It can be really choppy. So I make that transition during my last up strum. So anytime you have a strumming pattern that has that last up strum in there, start making your transition during that last up strum. And you can only do this with chords that allow these open strings. If you're doing it with chords where the open strings aren't going to sound good, or there's situations where it's really not going to sound good, I'll show you how to deal with that later. But for now, with all the chords that I've shown you, you can make that transition during that last up strum. And it creates a different sound. You can actually hear it happening. So if I do it with G to D to E minor to C, you'll be able to hear what happens when I do that. You can hear how there's kind of that type of sound right on that last up strum. And it actually adds a nice sound to the song a lot of times in the right situations, and can actually make it flow a whole lot better. In situations where that doesn't fit, you either take that last up strum out or you have to mute strings as you're doing it. But like I said, that's more advanced. We'll deal with that later. For now, just make your transitions during that last up strum, and it'll really help you keep a nice flowing strum. So to start off, you're going to start with muted strings. I think that'll be pretty easy for you, and then one chord, I think that'll be pretty easy for you. But then if you look at example 3, that's where it's going to get a little tricky because you're making the chord transitions, and like I said, make the transition during the last up strum so that it's all flows smoothly, and so that chord's right in place for that next down strum. And if you start with example 3 with the G to D sus4 to E minor 7 to C add 9, it's a lot easier because you're leaving the 3rd and 4th fingers in the whole time, so you don't have as much of the type of sound. You actually just keep this going the whole time, so it sounds like this. So it's a little easier when you have those 2 high strings ringing out the whole time. So for starting off playing the strumming pattern with chord progression, this is a good chord progression to use. It makes it a lot easier to make those transitions. And I don't really need to go over those transitions, I don't think. Just make sure you leave your 2 fingers there the whole time, and when you're making the transitions, just move your 1st and 2nd finger, leave your 3rd and 4th finger in place. So G to D sus4, E minor 7, C add 9. You have to remove these off the strings every time because there's no shared fretted notes that you can keep, but just try to keep them close to the fretboard, don't let them fly all around, and keep these 2 fingers down. And then once you can do it with that chord progression, you can try it out with the other chord progressions, any of the others that we've gone over, and it's going to be more difficult at first since you're not keeping those 2 high strings in there, but over time you'll get it and it'll be really easy to you. So that's basic strumming pattern 3. Like I said, really common strumming pattern. You'll be able to use it all the time, get a lot of mileage out of it. So really just work on it, work on making the transition during that last up strum so you can keep a nice flowing strum, and this will really get you ready for diving into more advanced strumming patterns later. Be sure to look in your e-guide under this lesson where you'll find step-by-step instructions for how to practice and retain everything that we just went over. You'll also find instructions for when to move on to the next lesson. So thanks for watching and keep moving forward.